I just want to clarify something which you should be aware of, and that is right here you saw that we performed a rolling update. So if I basically port forward the deployment and then open up my web browser, type localhost 8081, you can see that this is the version 1 because we've rolled back previously. And what I want to show you is if I go back to VS Code, have a look. So what we have is the following. So if I just collapse that for a second, we have this deployment.yaml and the image is version 2, right? But what we're currently running on our cluster is version 1. So you see that we have some discrepancy here. Now, this is really important that you understand that you should really be doing updates using declarative approach and not imperative. Because this file right here, if you are working for a team, for example, it should go through a version control system such as Git, for example, right? So you want to see all the changes and see exactly the current version of your application. So you can see that now we have a discrepancy where the YAML file does not represent what is currently running on our cluster. So in here, what I'm going to do is basically, if I go back to my terminal, Control C there, and if I apply the deployment, you can see that now it's configured. And if I basically say now port forward, go back to my web browser, refresh, you can see that it's back to version 2. So this is something that you have to bear in mind, right? So when doing updates, it's best to do updates through your YAML because this will represent what is running on the cluster. And I've told you about imperative versus declarative approach. So it's really useful for you to basically learn all of these commands because sometimes in case of emergency, then you can just hop on to the cluster and then perform the rollback yourself. But just bear in mind that if you were to apply this exact same file, then you basically applying a version that was previously broken, for example, right? So this is just something for you to bear in mind. Now, let's say that we have a version 3. So version 3 right here. And then let me change this to version 3. Save this. And then in here, if I press Control C and basically let's apply the deployment. There we go, configured. And kubectl get pods -w. You can see that it's terminated the old ones already and it's running the new ones. There we go, Control C. And then if I put forward the deployment 8081, if I now reload, the background should change. There we go. So this is a new version of the application and you can see version 3 in here. Oops, that took me to my website. But basically here you can see that this is the version 3 up and running. And if I go back in here for a second, and then if I say rollout and then history, so roll out and then history deployment, have a look. So you can see that we have, this was the previous one. So this was actually the first one. And then we have 4. This is the version 4 or revision 4, my bad, which has the version 2, revision 5 in here. And this is version 3. So there we have it. If you have any questions, drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on.